this caller says, I've been going through rough financial times. Chapter 7, bankruptcy. I'm just kind of mentally and physically worn out, but I'm hanging in there. Well, isn't that what you're supposed to do? You hang in there. You know, I remember sometimes these things will trigger something Dr. Scott said. There was a man that had called in, and he said, please pray for me. My wife left me, and I'm facing bankruptcy. Did any of you remember what Dr. Scott said? He said, count yourself lucky. Very few people get to start over clean like that in life. Gems of wisdom, yes? Wow. You know, it's funny because sometimes we don't know why. It's the way it happens. We don't understand. We had such a good plan. We had it all worked out, and then these things happen. But I also believe God sometimes lets those seasons of drought and of famine come so we can understand more about Him. You know, the same pressure will either make you doubt and disbelieve and walk away, or will leave you with nothing to cling onto and hold on to except for Him and His Word. So sometimes it's not like we should rejoice in somebody saying, I'm going bankrupt, but go back and read Romans 5 and you recognize what that boasting in tribulation is. Not like, oh boy, I'm going bankrupt, yay! But rather, there's a reason and a purpose for everything. And sometimes the things that happen, they're not brought on by God, but God will enter into those situations to work it out. Lots of interesting phone calls, but the ones I'm really interested in are yours. I'm looking for reservations and commitments. And I don't want anybody to think that when I said what I said about weary in well-doing, I have that personal eyewitness to have seen that from many from this congregation, the weariness of what's the point and why continue toiling and why continue giving and why. Then you know what happens? A lot of those people go out, they leave, their weariness overtakes them, the fainting comes, which is that final loosing, and then they're out there. And tell me, what do you find out there? This is not conceit. Tell me what you find out there. You may find another ministry to participate in, but you're going to have to do some works. You're going to have to, and you check the list of things you're going to have to do, and you realize, you know, there's a couple of things that you probably need to have a reality check on. I never said I was perfect. I don't present myself as that. Just someone who honestly loves God, tries to present the truth of the word rightly divided. And your weariness, your dullness, your falling away, that's your cause, that's your issue. I've said this many times, you know, how many people have come back? Oh, I was out there and, you know, while I was out there I thought I could find and I could do, and yeah, you'll find somewhere to go. Trust me, you can find anywhere to go. Lots of places. I challenge you to find somewhere where really there's very little required or asked of you. I ask that you make a commitment, that you keep that commitment in faith, and that you come full of faith, believing and faithing for God to do what He said He would do. There's no sign your life away on a membership card. I've told you. You want to leave? Be decent instead of just disappearing. There's so many people who do that. I should write a book on how to leave a church. Because so many people are just very ignorant. They stumble upon something that I say, or I remember when Dr. Scott, I've told you this, when Dr. Scott was teaching on the opening verse of Romans, Paulus doulos, and there was a couple of core people here that, you know, because he translated it as Paul, slave of Christ, they, did you hear that? Oh, I'm out of here. You know, the tragedy is that he was a brilliant linguist. And the tragedy is that these very people that were in such a tizzy over that couldn't read Greek. Or if they could, they couldn't use a lexicon because they would have found that that word shouldn't be dulled down into servant as the King James, but rather slave of Christ. If you think about it, that was the culture. That word existed in the culture in that day. Slavery existed in that day. And Paul took that word and turned it from a secular use in a pejorative sense to a very dignified commitment, considering he understood, bought and paid for by the shed blood of Christ. Therefore, Paulos doulos. But I'm telling you, even with Dr. Scott, people stumbled and they'd leave over something. And he was right about what he said. You know, so you'd be very hard-pressed to find somebody who presented the truth who was more right most of the time. And somehow, I don't know, when we come into the church, we put on this, you heard him say, you've heard me say, you know, I don't preach perfectionism, I don't preach legalism, and then suddenly, and you all say amen to that in your spirit, but then here comes the critic's hat and the, you know, I say I'm not your fruit inspector, but I'll be. You come out there and you're going to inspect and probe what I said and turn it 5 ways from last Sunday into something I didn't say and then leave because, well, I just don't agree with that. Really? And how much time have you given to examination of what I've said? And when you're willing to put in as much time as I've put in to what I have presented, come back and talk to me. Don't tell me because you've been in the church for 20 or 30 years, therefore, because basically that says that there was no room for error on Dr. Scott's part, as there, according to you, isn't any room of error on my part either. And if you're that critical, I don't want you here anyway. If you think about it, would you want to associate with somebody just in a fellowship, sideways relationship who was so critical of your every single word? Would you have fellowship? Would you have friendship with this person if that was the case? No. And isn't it strange that people demand of a person like myself, of even of Dr. Scott, demand this, I'm going to agree with everything you say, or if I can't agree with everything, I'm leaving. Well, fine, it's not a cult. I've told you, there's the door. You know, don't let it hit you on the way out. But smart people will come to a certain conclusion. Go, go, go. But you're not going to find the opportunity without all the bondage that you will encounter out there. A lot of people saying a lot of different things with a lot of buts attached. So, there are a lot of people who became weary in well-doing. If we'd be a little bit more sensitive to the Spirit of God and to His Word, we'd take that to ourselves, even if it's only by 1%, to say, there is no perfect person. I'm not perfect, you're not perfect. Newman's not perfect. Although he thinks he is. And you keep going with the purpose. And you don't become dull, pointless, worthless in well-doing. I've seen it with my eyes here, so I know this is what happens. And the cure is you keep your eyes on Him. That is the cure-all. Now, I'm still believing there's a couple of drifters out there. They come and go. They come in the church, and I forgive them, let them come back in the church, and then they come in for a little while, and then they huff and puff over something, and then they leave again. But you're going to come to a place eventually where you're going to say, oh, I'd like to come back, and I'm going to say, why? Don't think, I'm very forgiving, and I've told you very openly, I believe in second, third, fourth, fifth chances, even to the people who've been the worst towards me in this ministry. I would believe in what the scripture says, to forgive and to give someone another chance, to restore them. But we have a couple there. These are these regular offenders. They come and go. It's like a tennis match. And at some point, I don't want you to think that I'm just some pushover sitting here saying, oh, of course, it'll be one time too many. And you won't know. People who've been around me have seen this about me. I am willing to forgive, except things that have been done against this ministry, which I say it's not in my position to forgive, because it's things done against God. I'm not God. I can't say, oh, I forgive that person for these acts against the church. That's not my business. That's God's. That's his problem. But I have a couple of people who think it's just a revolving door. Because well, Pastor Scott believes in forgiveness. She'll let me come back again, and it'll all be okay. And at some point, you're going to be surprised. Now, people around me have seen this. There have been a couple of people over the years where you just say, enough's enough, because I'm not playing games. Now, for me, I am here for a purpose. If I wanted to play the revolving door game, no one could play it better than me. But I'm here for a purpose, and I'm not here for people to treat me as a doormat either. So some of you better figure out, that are sitting out there thinking, well, it'll work out, and next month I'll write a letter, and I'll say all the right things, and Pastor Scott will let me back. No, you don't know that. I don't want you to think that I'm desperate for friends or for followers or for people who want to worship God. If you think that, you're mistaken. I'm looking for people who earnestly are wanting to follow hard after God, like David, like all the people in the Bible, not perfect, fumbling, sometimes in fear and sometimes in other states of being, but all the while trying to press close to God. So, lots of weary and fainting people. And I've told you what the cure is. You keep your eyes on the prize. That's him. Get on the telephone.
To this house, magnify the Lord, lift up holy hands, our hearts in one accord, worship and bow down before him, exalt his name today. Come into this house,